Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor built a cinder block wall in the middle of my driveway, claiming half of it belongs to him." This story is not about me, but actually about my dad and what happened between him and a neighbor. My dad lives alone, and since he is older, people think that means they can push him around and get away with it. Those people are dead wrong though. This was not really an issue though, because in the neighborhood everyone seemed to know and love my father. The house next to him got sold and knocked down years ago without having any buyers until one day someone finally bought the land in order to build themselves a house. This was fine with my dad, and he was not even upset that he would be needing to listen to the construction noises daily. Then he came home and saw that there was a line of cinder blocks on his driveway. Keep in mind, he has what I at least call a double driveway where two cars can fit side by side. About halfway was the line, and he was a little annoyed, thinking that the workers were storing their stuff like that. When he looked closer though, my dad saw that they were actually cemented into the ground of his driveway. He was not having any of this and went to go talk to his neighbor. "Dad, excuse me." "Neighbor, hello, can I help you with something?" "Dad, I live next door and I want to know why your builders put down cinder blocks on my property." "Neighbor, on the driveway?" "Oh no, I told them to do that. Half of it is mine after all, and I didn't really want the driveway there anyway." "Dad, actually the entire thing is on my property, so..." The neighbor cut him off immediately. "Listen, old man, maybe it's because you're too old and forgetting things, but only half of that driveway is yours." He turned away from my dad and didn't see just how angry he was. My dad was not gonna lie down and get bullied while having his property destroyed. He asked me to come over and help him search through the boxes of papers in the basement until we found the deed to the house. With it was a map of the property lines which showed that the entire driveway really was his. I offered to talk to the neighbor for him again, but he refused and didn't want me getting directly involved any more than I already was. It didn't stop me though from getting the info about what happened next out of him. It turns out that the neighbor did not seem to care about the deed, and he had called the town to try and get them to come and intervene. They said that they could, but it might take months before anyone was able to come out and get this sorted. Normally he was patient, but in a situation like this he was not going to just sit and wait. He called the local news station, and it turned out that they were very interested in this story. So he told them what happened, and they even went over with a camera crew to see the blocks along the driveway. The story spread like wildfire, and soon the neighborhood that my dad had always loved was rallying up behind him and calling for the man to remove the cinder blocks for the town to do something about it. The neighbor refused to get on camera and comment, so the image that the news gave him was extremely unflattering. Everyone now hated this guy, and he hadn't even moved in yet because the construction was not finished. My dad knew that if any of the workers started to try and dig up on his driveway, he would have to call the police for trespassing. However, that luckily never ended up happening. Instead, the man stuck to his guns that the land should have been his, and he had every right to have that line of cinder blocks cemented into my dad's driveway. To be honest, we had no idea what someone could have even been wanting with that little amount of extra space sectioned off. Nothing worked though, and the blocks remained, but my dad did not waver and knew that he couldn't stop until his land was returned back to the way it was supposed to be. The news had helped him once, and although the story died down, he knew that they never got a chance to speak to his neighbor. This time, the new neighbor finally agreed to be interviewed. My guess is that he found out that the whole town hated him and realized that he needed to do something to avoid being public enemy number one. It actually started off really rough with him once again, just claiming that the property belonged to him, and my dad did not understand it. He was once again shown the papers and at that point did not have much of anything to say. He knew the whole town was disappointed with him, and it seemed like he was going to stay on his denial train as far as it would take him. That was when the news reporter once again showed him the papers that proved that part of the land belonged to my dad and was not part of the plot that he purchased to build a house on. He fell silent after that and didn't have much else to say to the person interviewing him. Now, I know that around this point is when you are used to something big and exciting happening, some kind of sick revenge, or maybe the town finally showing up and forcing him to remove them, but instead, though, what happened was that the man actually went up to my dad and started to apologize. He said that when he got the land, he was told his line was there and already had everything planned before my dad showed him the papers. He then went ahead and removed all the cinder blocks and apologized to my dad. Honestly, I'm the type of person that likes to get a little revenge for those that have wronged me. My dad was not like that at all though. Neighbor removing the cinder blocks was honestly the only thing that he really wanted, and he did not want any revenge past that. He was not the type of person to get revenge on people, he had just refused to be pushed over by a bully and letting him have his way. It's honestly the thing that I respect most about my father, and I hope that one day I can actually act like him instead of being the kind of person that just wants to get revenge on everyone that upsets me. Either way, he now has his full driveway and has yet to speak to that neighbor again, but he doesn't have any problems with him either, which is the important part. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I would sort of agree with that, because if you always try to get revenge on people, especially when it is about neighbors, you sooner or later might burn yourself in some way or another, because it is very likely that you have to live next to these people for the next, who knows, 10 or 20 years or maybe even more, so it can be beneficial to stand back a little bit, although that does not mean that you should give in to bullies. Always stand up for yourself. Either way, if you enjoy the stories about crazy neighbors, then please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. The next one is titled The Worst Neighbor Ever. I've been living next door to this guy for 10 years now. He is a single man, 60 years old, and at first he seemed way too involved and overbearing and needed to control everything we did in our yard, such as what we planted and where we planted it. We could not do squat without him coming over to tell us what we should be doing instead. Most of the time we went with it just to appease him, but after a couple of years we decided to make our yard the way we wanted it instead of trying to make him happy. That is when all hell started breaking loose. He, I will call him Steve, started texting and calling and emailing daily, directing me to do all sorts of things, take a picture, run it up to the drugstore to print it out for him, always 2 copies. Example of such a task would be to run over to his house, take a before picture of a plant or bush, and then take an after picture after he has pruned it just ever so slightly. Why he wants or needs 2 copies of this is a creepy mystery. Then he would send me a picture of a random old clock he saw in a picture and would want me to locate the clock. Needle in a haystack to say the least, and purchase it for him, and he would pay me back. And by the way guys, does anyone remember, I think it was the scene from SpongeBob, where Patrick had to search the hay in the needle stack? One of my all-time favorite cartoon moments. Anyway, I also had to go into his house and print out random files for him all the time because he could not figure it out himself, he said. Every single time I showed him how to do it and even sent him instructional videos, but he never stopped needing help with it and all sorts of random stuff non-stop all day. I did it all just to keep him appeased because he was super creepy. But it soon got overwhelming, and if I didn't respond and run over there to help him immediately, he would blow my phone up or come looking for me and accuse me of hiding from him. He would see that I would be leaving and he would run over and stand in front of my car to make sure that I helped him first. I started leaving the house just to breathe a little bit away from him, and he would bug me non-stop about when I would be back. When I got back, he saw it even if I tried to be sneaky about my return, and he would text and say that I saw you got home, telling me I needed to go help him at that time. If I reached out my front door to grab the mail real quick after checking that he's not out there, he immediately came out of nowhere and accosted me to do something for him. It's a nightmare and I feel like I'm a prisoner wearing a straitjacket. As if that is not enough, Steve lurks around in the dark in his house at night. I now believe it is so that he can spy into our house easily. We noticed early on that his lights were never on when he was home, even if it was dark outside. He flips a light on for a second and then flips it back off right away. Several times per night, all throughout the nighttime sleeping hours, he would shine a light into my bedroom upstairs. It lights my whole room up and wakes me up if I happen to be sleeping. I had my son confront him about this and he said he thought someone was stealing gas out of his car and he was checking to see if anyone was outside. His car and my upstairs bedroom are nowhere near each other. I got so creeped out after a bit that I put thick blankets over the windows on that side of the house so that I can have complete privacy from his eyes. While in his house one day, I looked out the window towards our yard to see what his view looked like and he said,
"Yeah, this is where I watch you guys from and see everything you're doing over there."
Once in the middle of the night I couldn't sleep and went outside in the pitch black and set up my camera and tripod to get some night sky shots. Within minutes I heard a whistling coming from his pitch black yard and he said my name in the darkness. I could not see him and I did not hear him come or go. How the heck did he know that I was out there in the middle of the night in the first place, and why did he feel the need to make sure that I knew he was there watching me? I get the willies just thinking about this incident. Super creep factor alert, my bedroom is upstairs on the side of the house that faces his house. Every single night when I go to bed, no matter what time it is, Steve also goes to bed. I only know this because he flips his upstairs light on momentarily and when he does, it lights up my entire room even with blinds and curtains drawn. Then he goes to the bathroom and his toilet is right beside the window and his window does not hide anything. We told him when we first moved in that his bathroom glass was not privacy glass and that we could see everything over there and that we have a young daughter. He has never made any effort to conceal his bathroom activities. I am super creeped out that he goes to bed whenever I do, like, okay, they are done for the night, nothing else to watch here, I might as well go to bed. I have videoed it 100 times because nobody believes that it is not just a coincidence. Every single night without fail, no matter what time it is, he will flip his upstairs bathroom light on about a minute after I go upstairs into my bedroom for the night. Over the years we have been planting evergreen bushes along the property line to get a little privacy from him. Every time he has harassed us during planting and told us not to do it because he likes to see over here and needs us to leave him an opening at least. Obviously we did not do that and he has had trouble eyeballing us, so he actually paid contractors to come and dump truckloads of dirt into his yard to build it up by 3 feet all along our fence line, and now when he stands in his yard, his creepy head sticks out over top of all we did to gain privacy. Our 6-foot sections of privacy fence are now reduced to less than 4 foot from his side. Our 6 to 8 foot evergreens are now useless, his head easily peeks over top of all of them when he is standing in his yard. We have a small section of eastern red cedar trees along the front portion of the property line, which are too tall for him to peer over even after building his property up several feet up there. As soon as the final dirt and stone were hauled in and he found that he could not see over them, he went to my husband's work and harassed him about cutting them down by several feet because he needs to be able to see over them. My husband said no thanks to Steve and he went directly to the city to complain about the trees. The city came and looked and said there was no problem with our trees and they cannot make us cut them short. The next day Steve is out there with shovels and a hatchet digging all along the property line and cuts all the roots that he can find that come from our cedar trees. I called my husband at work to ask if he wanted to come confront him and hopefully make him stop, but he said let it go and if they die we will just plant something taller there. So far they are still green, so we will see if he succeeded or not very soon. When he is outside working in his yard, he will be quiet as a mouse if we are not outside, but the second one of us comes out, he starts drumming on the bottom of a bucket or doing a weird scream like he got hurt. He makes these noises non-stop while we are out, and then he stops making them when he thinks we are back inside. Every single time he leaves the house, even if only for a minute, he immediately does his property line patrol walk where he inspects everything he can from his side to make sure we have made no changes since he left. He has often accused us of touching his trees and that we were not to do that because they are sentimental to him. He has also accused us of taking things out of his yard, which of course we didn't, and neither did anyone else, because a few days later I will see the missing object in his yard mysteriously again. He has all sorts of weird stuff placed around his yard, including bowling balls. He has said many times that we are not to plant anything in our yard when he is not home, and has complained to us when he has come home to find that we planted a flower somewhere. We put a lock on the gate along the side of the house because he had just always helped himself to our yard and even came into my house one day when I was in the bathroom with the door open. I made it abundantly clear that he was not to do that again, and after we put the lock on the gate he complained about it and will not drop it, saying that we are locking him out. I can see his yard from my upstairs windows, so before I would go outside I would take a quick peek to make sure he was not out so I could enjoy my yard for a minute, but every single time I went out he came out immediately. Clearly he just sits over there and watches us all day and all night. A couple of years ago I had it up all to my eyeballs and sent him an email asking him to not require me to do all his personal assistant stuff anymore, and that I was done and needed to use my time for our things. I also asked him to not come into my yard when he sees me outside because I try to get bird and nature pics and he always pops over and scares my subjects away after I have sat quietly for 20 minutes to try to get a shot. He was always creeping up behind me out of nowhere when I was out and always pestering me to stop whatever I was doing and go do his stuff. He has a perennial flower assortment in his yard and has several yard tours each year. Our yard is extremely well landscaped with many unique trees, bushes and perennials, and when he gives his tours all of his guests can easily see into our yard since he built his up so much, and they all comment about our yard and ask questions about what we have over here. This burns him up and he always says,
"Eyes over here, this is a day for flowers,"
which always stuns his guests. We have always done a lot of digging and landscaping, and we have often encountered bones that appear to be femurs and the like. This guy always comes running over and says not to call the authorities and that the people before us buried a bunch of dogs in our yard, and also that this property used to be an Indian burial ground and that it also used to be a trash dumping site back in the 1800s. We asked him what was the big deal if we took it to have it checked out, and he said that if a human bone was found here, the state would come and dig up all his precious daylilies. So we have a running joke that he is a serial killer. Which, by the way guys, is not exactly the funniest joke in this situation, because that guy certainly does not seem to have a sound mind. Anyway, another really weird thing this guy does is he opens and closes every car door, including his trunk, every time he comes or goes, and several times throughout the day. And by the way guys, this kind of sounds like a tic, something that many people have, although usually it doesn't really involve car doors. Either way, sometimes he will come outside, do the open and close routine, move his car forward a foot or two, and then go back inside. Then a little later he will come out and do it all again, but move his car back to where it was originally. His driveway is right beside my office/computer window, so I could see him coming and going and hear all the openings and closings of doors and trunks all day before we put the privacy evergreens there. He always opens his passenger door to place any tiny object that he is taking with him, such as an envelope, on the passenger seat instead of just putting it over there after getting in his driver's side. Oftentimes he will put said small object into the trunk instead. He often returns home and opens the trunk to pull out the tiniest things. He will lock the doors and take his small item inside and then come back out a minute or two later and open and close all the doors again and retrieve one more small item. He will do this routine and retrieve his items one at a time until he is finished. It's such a distracting noise, hearing 100 car doors opening and closing all day. It makes no sense, and I wonder if he is doing it because he is crazy or if he is trying to irritate or distract me or just get my attention. I have no idea. And to be honest, Ripe Stars, in this situation I would assume that obviously this guy is nuts, but indeed he seems to try to get the attention of OP by doing all this random stuff, and I guess in the end he just tries to find a reason to have some sort of confrontation with OP to make her as uncomfortable as possible. Either way, one day he came to my front door with a high-end Nikon camera and user manual and instructed me to go ahead and read the manual and learn how to use the camera so that I could show him how to use it. At that point, I had seriously had about enough and told him he can read and he can go through the manual and learn it for himself. That would have taken me many hours to do. He didn't appreciate that at all. Once he showed up and dropped off an antique slide viewer that was broken and instructed me to take it apart and fix it, that he needed it by set date a couple of weeks ahead, I returned it to him a few days later and said I'm not any sort of technician and I cannot fix it. A few days later he brought it back again and told me I didn't try hard enough and that I was to fix it for real this time. I held onto it for a few months and then returned it saying I tried like hell to fix it, but I couldn't. As of now, I've not had to look at that damn thing again. We had a windstorm a few months ago and a small tree limb off of one of our large pine trees broke and fell into our yard. The limb happened to hang slightly into his yard while it was attached, so in his mind it was his limb and we were not to touch it. He came stomping over here complaining that we cut the branch. He was livid and wouldn't drop it. We told him we didn't touch it and the wind broke it, but he will not drop it. It is our tree though, and we can cut it if we want anyway. I have a million stories to tell about this guy, but I doubt many people will get this far into my story as it is. It did feel nice to vent at least. Thanks for reading and allowing me to vent. Edit: after getting many comments about why I am still allowing this behavior, I need to clarify that a couple of years ago when I said I told him I wasn't going to do all of his assistant stuff for him anymore and to not come over here anymore, he has not come over except for once and I just shook my head and came back inside without saying a word. He left and has not come back yet. He has gone to my husband's work a couple of times though. He has not called or texted or emailed either. That part is over, thankfully. We still have to deal with other things, but I mainly just wanted to see if this was as bad as I feel it is, or if I am just too sensitive because I have the willies so badly. Most people have been helpful and supportive and have made very helpful suggestions, which I am thankful for. As for the 3 or 4 bones we have found while digging, many tree holes over the years, they could be to all kinds of animals, including small barnyard animals that people around here used to have running in their yards. We did not take it very seriously, but it is still creepy, especially after what he said. He is just so weird in so many ways and says odd things all the time. We really don't think he is a killer for real, it's more of a joke. And yeah guys, if you would have to deal with such a crazy neighbor, what would you have done if you were in OP's shoes? Honestly, I gotta applaud OP for staying rather calm in this situation, because if I had such a neighbor, I'm not sure if I could sleep through a single night. I probably would try to get some kind of restraining order or something if that is possible, but I guess since he has not really done anything that the police would warrant as worthy for a restraining order, I guess that would be tough to get. And Ripe Stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously, and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/ripeyoutube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.